Richard O'Donoghue.
Yeah, I'd also like to pass on my best wishes to the County Caller Sean O'Feil on a speedy recovery, and best wishes to him. Taoiseach, inflation is at a 14-year high thanks to the rise in energy cost, supply shortages and increased demand following COVID reopening. The Central Statistic have confirmed that the rising prices in October was the largest ever seen since April 2007. The squeeze on the household budget is due particularly to the over-exhausting government on crippling PAYE sector, particularly those living in rural areas. I'm going to make it very simple today. I have a payslip here from week 33 of the current 2021. If someone was to earn €500 net, that is into their hand per week, that it will cost the employer and the employee €680.65. The employer pays 67.73 PRSI for the employee. The employee is a single person. PA deduct €74.22 per week. USE deducted amount €14.18 per week. PRSI deducted €24.52 per week. That's €180.65, and that allows them to have €500 per week. Now we'll adjust this to the cost of living. An average person commuting to work and family commitments in County Limerick will spend €100 a week on fuel. The government takes €57 out of that €100. Food for a single person, a moderate, is €20 per day, which equals €140 per week. The government gets €26 per week out of that. ESB costs per week, €30. The government gets €6.40 out of that. Heating costs, that is coal, timber, oil, to heat the family home, costs roughly €40 per week. The government takes €7.48 out of that. Clothes and footwear, which is €1,560 a year, which equals €30 a week, the government takes €6.40 out of that. And if you're very, very lucky to have a room for rent at €100 per week, the government takes a further €10 out of that. And you're left then with €60, which is miscellaneous, right? And God forbid if you want to go to get a pint or go for a meal or go to the cinema with just €60, the government takes €12 of that.
First of all, that phrase, the government takes. Who is the government? I would argue, no, I make the point that this is a very simplistic kind of presentation, which goes on all of the time. It's the social contract, to varying degrees. We might disagree as to where the balance of the social contract is. What the social contract is, society raises revenue through the elected government of the day to rebalance out that revenue in respect of education services, childcare services, health services, mental health services, infrastructure, the very issues that the deputies will consistently come into the House and raise with ministers. Why don't I have extra money to spend on this? Why don't I have extra money to spend on that? We have a very strong social welfare code in Ireland, which costs a lot of revenue. That revenue has to be raised. It has to be substantial revenues has to be raised. And people may argue that it's not enough, and some argue differently, but you can't get away from the huge sums of money that are involved in social protection and in education and in health in particular, which really reflect the majority view, I would say, in terms of how we want to organise society. And that does mean that government has to raise revenue on behalf of society to be able to do the things we want to do. And that involves PRSI as well. One of the big challenges in higher education at the moment, of further education, is the the need to dramatically increase the number of skills programmes to upskill the economy for retrofitting, to upskill the economy for offshore wind, to upskill the economy for apprenticeships generally across all the trades. And that's working, and the funding we have provided for that is definitely yielding results in terms of increased applications for apprenticeships. But that's the balance. Now, I do accept, Deputy, that there's a big pressure on energy prices at the moment. I have no doubt, agree with you there. We did in the budget bring in a taxation package, modest, but designed to make some sort of a contribution to help people. And then we had fuel allowance and other welfare increases to try and cushion the blow against the energy prices. And the government is keeping this under review, this issue of the impact of increased global energy prices on households. And I fully accept the pressure that energy prices currently is causing to many, many families and households out there. But it's very much a global phenomenon. The European Central Bank are saying it will be short term, and that towards certainly after the first quarter next year, they should begin to recede. So we'll have to monitor that and review that very closely to see what further helps we can give.
Taoiseach, your answer to the people was to put a 2% increase on the fuel. That was your answer to the people. Who pays the most, Taoiseach? Okay, you're taking 45% of a wage. Now, what I'm asking you today is, I've asked you about the rural person, because there's no infrastructure, and you mentioned infrastructure 2 or 3 times through your deliberations. If I was living in this city, I would have the choice of a Luas, a train, a Dart, a bus service. I could cycle, I could walk. There is none of that outside the city boundary. And your failure to introduce infrastructure outside the city areas is what I'm talking about. So it's a rural person which is outside, and the famous red cow is rural. Everything outside is rural. And everyone outside of that do not have infrastructure, so they pay the most. But if you live in the city, you have a choice. We have no choice in the rural areas. That's why I'm asking you to look at something, reduce the VAT, or we won't have food on our tables come this winter.
Yeah, first of all, in terms of rural Ireland, the major initiative was taken unprecedented in terms of increased allocation of resources for a rural transport scheme. The only city that has Luas and Dart is Dublin. Other cities don't have that. They are trying to develop a more expanded bus network. That's acknowledged. We are one of the only a few EU countries that, by way of special derogation from the general European Union rules, already apply a reduced rate of VAT of 13.5% to energy prices. And under EU rules, our reduced rate of VAT of 13.5% on energy prices cannot be reduced below 12%. If we were to attempt to reduce the rate to, say, 9%, I'm informed, for a few months, the VAT rate would afterwards revert to the standard rate of 23%. So our special derogation would be lost. So that VAT option isn't as simple as was presented and has been presented in the House at all. It could have worse repercussions down the line. But what is important is that we do look at ways to cushion the impact that increases in energy prices is having on families, and we are keeping that under review.